The horror genre of games never really piqued my interest growing up. Besides the fact that I was a total wimp, I also didn't like the slow gameplay, resource management, and eerie vibe that accompanied these games. Every game I played as a child was one where I was fully in control, and the more things a game would take away from me, the less I would enjoy it, which is precisely what the survival horror genre does. It starves you for resources and makes you think before you act on how to approach a situation. Whether or not to use an item, do you save it for an emergency? Is that emergency now? It can be very stressful at times. But now that I'm older and have played many more games, I can say that I missed out on a lot. And the game that made me change my mind was none other than Dead Space. For a 15-year-old game, the original Dead Space has aged extremely well. I played the entire trilogy before the remake was released to prepare myself, and thought the gameplay was still fantastic. There are some areas in the original Dead Space that do show their age, like the dreaded turret section and the zero gravity sections, but besides a few nitpicks, the game still holds its own. This, however, cannot be said about its successor, in particular, Dead Space 3, who diverted from the series' traditional horror approach in favor of a more action-oriented style with a focus on co-op and microtransactions. This confused many players, myself included, and while the game sold relatively well, this apparently wasn't good enough for EA, which would eventually lead them to disbanding the development team and any hopes for a sequel. The series would remain dormant until EA announced a remake of Dead Space in July 2001, but EA's track record in implementing disgusting business tactics like releasing unpolished games and implementing microtransactions in their games had me questioning the release of a new Dead Space. But after years of waiting for this game and finally getting my hands on it, I can say with confidence that the Dead Space remake is perfect. Dead Space is scary good. I don't think I need to tell you that, but I will anyway. Motive Studio has done a stellar job in remaking a beloved game. So much so that I honestly believe this is now the default way to experience Dead Space. Besides an entire overhaul on the graphics, Motive has also changed a variety of things, all for the better I might add. The zero gravity sections are reworked to allow you to freely move throughout the areas, instead of launching yourself from one wall to the next. Weapons are found throughout your playthrough instead of buying them from the shop. And Isaac is now fully voiced. That's right, he's no longer a silent protagonist in this game. I know some people may not like this change, but Isaac's voice only adds value to the story. He still grunts and shouts when he's in combat, and never says anything out of character or comical one-liners to ease the tension. This ain't a Marvel movie, folks. The situation on board the Ishimura is a serious one, and I'm glad that it hasn't changed. From its fantastic opening sequence to its cryptic and dark ending, the Dead Space remake delivers on all regards. Presentation is one of the most important aspects in horror, as it helps establish the tone and gives us a taste of what we can expect moving forward. The intro for this game does a great job in setting everything up. From the beginning, we see how important and serious this job is to the crew of the Kellion, who were assigned to investigate and repair the planet cracker ship, the USG Ishimura. For engineer Isaac Clarke, it's about apologizing and bringing home his girlfriend Nicole, who was stationed on the ship as a doctor. As for Chief Security Officer Zach Hammond and computer analyst Kendra Daniels, their constant bickering with one another alludes to something mysterious, and how not everyone sees eye to eye on the purpose of this mission. But what makes this opening sequence far better than its original counterpart is how well Isaac is written. When the Kellion starts experiencing some troubles on their way aboard the Ishimura, we see Isaac's confidence and expertise as an engineer in full display, as he helps guide the Kellion safely inside. This guy is the real deal, and as we'll see later on, those skills will come in handy, though landing inside the Ishimura was the least of their problems, as the ship has gone into full lockdown and is seemingly empty. As for the reasoning for this lockdown, well, I think the game does a good job in showing you. Dead Space loves shifting between its horror and action elements by giving us a nice contrast in visuals and audio to install fear in us. The game can get loud when it wants to, especially when there's trouble arising. The volume of the music will increase. Air vents will burst open all around you, indicating that there's enemies in the room with you. You'll hear them scream and moan, while the sound of your weapon firing echoes throughout the room. Some sounds even drown out others, and you might not even notice that there's a necromorph standing right behind you because you were too busy dealing with what's in front of you. Lights will flicker on and off. Other times, it will be pitch black. At times, you'll navigate an area with bright lighting, only for the objective to flip, forcing you to backtrack. But this time, the lights have gone out. I hope you had a good look at the layout of the room because once it goes dark, those necromorphs can pop up anywhere. Every clink, clank, bang, echo, rumble, and whisper elevates your heart rate and keeps you tense. It leaves the impression that at any moment, something can come out and attack you. Sometimes nothing will, and you'll realize that you just spent the last minute or so paranoid, opening the shop or the upgrade bench, thinking you're safe, only to hear a vent burst open and a necromorph breathing down your neck is both exhilarating and terrifying. I don't know what being a chihuahua feels like, but I'm guessing this is what it feels like. The visual and audio effects in Dead Space are top-notch, and are utilized to their maximum effort to immerse you into the world. Because so much of their fear tactics involve you actively traversing the Ishimura, you notice that there aren't too many cutscenes in this game. Dead Space never wants the feeling of suspense to leave you. Almost all interactions with characters happen in real time for Isaac. Video calls, for example, still allow you to move freely, never confining you. The menus and HUD function in a similar manner by never breaking the gameplay. The inventory system is very organized, never forcing you to micromanage your items because there's always enough room. The unique HUD located on the back of Isaac's suit isn't distracting, doesn't interfere, and clearly displays the essentials like your health and stasis charges so you can focus on the game itself. Together, all of these principles allow for a smooth, fun, and spooky experience. But don't think for a minute that you are powerless. Oh no, you're Isaac Clarke, the engineer who's gonna fix everything. And Dead Space gives you all the tools you need, quite literally, to solve all your problems. What sets apart Dead Space from other survival horror games is the arsenal of weapons Isaac uses to combat his foes. I say weapons, but they're actually tools. Mine is the plasma rifle, of course, function as multi-purpose devices in this situation. Its unorthodox combat, weapons, and enemies lead to unique ways of dealing with situations. In Dead Space, the traditional way of defeating enemies can't be solved by a bullet to the head. Instead, you must surgically slice off enemies' limbs to either disarm them or slow them down. Tools like the plasma cutter offer quick precision shots with the ability to switch your crosshair's axis to better align your aim with the enemy's limbs. The plasma rifle deals a moderate amount of damage and can even launch grenades. The Ripper launches a saw blade in front of you, tearing anything that gets in your way. The Force Gun shoots a wide kinetic blast of energy, pushing everything back. The Line Gun is a more powerful version of the plasma cutter, without the ability to rotate your crosshair, but place a mine instead. The contact beam sends out a powerful laser that obliterates enemies, and the flamethrower is, well, still a flamethrower. After dismembering them or knocking them down, only then can you proceed to finish them in the most satisfying and gruesome way to make sure they don't come back. Alongside his weapons, Isaac also has a stasis module to quickly slow down enemies and obstacles for him to safely cross, a kinetic grasp that lets him pick up and move objects, as well as the ability to throw them at blistering speeds. Just find something to pick up and throw it at a necromorph. This of course includes thrown limbs. Necromorph variety is surprisingly broad. Almost no two enemies can be defeated in a similar way. Some can be dismembered quite easily like the Slasher and the Leaper, while variants like the Lurker and the Brute need to be baited into showing you their backside or tentacles. Regardless of their weakness, precision is still the key, and I hope you brought along enough ammo, because these enemies won't give you a chance to breathe. Along with new graphical changes comes a new and improved story. Much of it still remains the same, but there's much more context now. A voiced Isaac makes situations on board the Ishimura feel more believable. In the original, Isaac's silent demeanor caused some awkward interactions with characters, since he just stood there and accepted any request without question. Now, he argues with Hammond and Kendra, he'll address situations, recommend actions, and take charge when he needs to. The Ishimura is a very hostile environment. No one other than Isaac is suited better for this job in fixing the ship, and he knows this. His confidence is what makes him badass, and his goal in finding Nicole drives him, though this doesn't make his job any easier. The game has you solving simple but realistic problems, like fixing the engines, reprogramming the asteroid defense system, repairing the oxygen system, and much more. Some areas of the Ishimura have been revised to give us a better experience compared to the original. The asteroid section has been changed completely. Long gone are the days of bad turret controls because this iteration is much more pleasing. The battle with the Leviathan in space is wonderfully designed, giving you the option to use the new turret function that you used earlier. And the zero gravity sections are redone entirely. Text and audio logs are still the best way in uncovering the mystery of what happened on board the Ishimura. And while the story is a bit easier to follow in the remake, it's still as cryptic as ever. Dead Space is survival horror at its finest, and the remake only enhances the experience. I cannot say anything negative about this game because it's nearly perfect. My only concern is that I want more, but the future of Dead Space is uncertain at the moment. A Dead Space 2 remake seems to be the next logical move due to the success of this game, but I wouldn't mind a fourth game if they return to their original roots. Regardless, Dead Space is a staple in the horror genre, and EA would be fools not to double down on this franchise. It's been a great year thus far, and it was only made better knowing that Dead Space was what started it all.